Imagine cutting your costs in half. VTEX, the enterprise platform offering commerce, OMS, marketplace solutions, and much more, can help you reduce your total cost of ownership by at least 50%. Trusted by global leaders such as Carrefour, Walmart, Cencosud, VTEX is the go-to choice for both CIOs and CEOs who demand excellence. Discover how VTEX can elevate your business today. Visit vtex.com or click the QR code on your screen. Let's go to the episode. We are back with a bonus episode of our Europe's Retail Evolution series in partnership with ShopTalk Europe. Today, we are diving deep into retail operations excellence and the powerful intersection between sustainability and profitability. My guest is Lindsay Haselhurst. She's the Chief Operating Officer of Currys, the UK's leading electronics and tech retailer. Lindsay is known as the exceptional leader who sets high standards, empowers high-performing teams, and consistently drives transformative results. With over 20 years of experience, she's reshaping Currys' operations, making sustainability not just a moral imperative, but a strategic advantage. From pioneering e-commerce initiatives to expertly navigating complex supply chain, Lindsay shows what more than impactful leadership looks like in retail today. Here's Paula Macaggi, and this is episode 66 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. Lindsay, it's a pleasure to have you here in London in ShopTalk's studio. Welcome to OFFBounds.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Lindsay, so when we first met virtually, that's the first time we're meeting in person, you said you like to have high-achieving, high-performing teams. I want to go straight to the point there because I'm so curious. How do you do that? How do you create a high-performing team?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say, who doesn't want a high-performing team? For me, it's absolutely essential. And the more senior and the bigger and the more complex roles you have, the more important. I'm not sure I have any secrets. I think there's kind of a fairly standard recipe for high-performing teams. And for me, that is starting off by a bit like a recipe. Never scrimp on the ingredients. So always recruit the best possible people you can, 100%. Then for me, it's about creating the environment for those people to be successful. So what we talk about a lot is high performance for us is about high support, but high challenge. So creating stretching, ambitious environment where people are really having to unlock that potential and outside of their comfort zones, but knowing that they've got support each kind of step of the way. So for me, that's so important, that balance of support and challenge in high performance. But I think there's two fundamental elements in any team, particularly high performing teams, and that's clarity and cohesion. Clarity. Do you understand what we're trying to achieve, where we're going? Do you understand your role in it? Do you understand how you're going to be measured for your success? That clarity is hugely important. You've got to keep coming back to that because clarity is, I think, the first starting point.
So it's basically everybody understanding the final goal and why we're doing that.
Well, there's the vision, and then there's the role that you play in that. So hopefully you're inspired, you're motivated, but then you are owning your part of that role, and also understanding how your role fits with everybody else's and how you're contributing. I think that's massive. But then cohesion, having 100 individuals pulling, albeit in a similar direction, isn't the same as having teams of people locked in, working together. And that cohesion, for me, is kind of huge. Creating an environment where, you win together. Everyone wins when you all win. That kind of culture is super important. But I think the secret ingredient, if there is one, is fun. There's not been a huge amount of downtime and fun over the last 5 years. So you have to make time and you have to enjoy what you're doing. So the pressure can be what it can be. It can be relentless, but I would say regular touch points, having fun, trusting each other. They're just some of the ingredients of it.
Because I know I find myself, agree with everything you're saying, but I find myself as a leader, sometimes, am I pushing too hard? Should I, I think it's important to set a challenge that's going to be for the growth of the employee, but I'm always like, am I pushing too hard? Is this person, it's hard to find the balance, I think.
Yeah, I think it's organic though. You don't get everything right. And I think the thing about leadership is even in your great team of great individuals, people are very different. So you're always tailoring. And, context is different as well. So you have to set the bar high. And I think that's where the support comes in. What level of support do people need? Sometimes people will just fly and they're off. They don't need a huge amount of support, even to get after the most stretching, kind of audacious goals. Whereas other people do need that more support. So I think that's the piece. It's not the ambition. I think you need to adjust. It's the level of support that kind of goes with getting there. But yeah.
Interesting. But let's go back a little bit. I have an audience of 50 countries, so not everybody might be familiar with Currys. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Currys is?
Okay, so Currys, we are the #1 electricals retailer in the UK and Ireland, but also in the Nordics. We turn over around £9 billion in terms of services. We're an omnichannel retailer. So we have just around 700 stores across our two businesses, but obviously also online. Yeah, #1. So significant kind of market share. The kind of products we sell, what you'd expect, televisions, cookers, laptops, mobile phones, but also extended ranges. So yeah, one of the most popular new products we've introduced recently is electronic dartboard. Which,
all right.
So you can see how the range extension is there. But yes, that's what we do. I guess what makes Currys perhaps interesting is we're a retailer, I guess like most retailers are, but we have a very significant, what I would call, back end. So the back end of Currys is all about the fact that electrical products have a very long and extended life. So we don't just sell products. We sell products, we install products, we support products, we insure products, we repair products, we refurb our products. So that's part of what I think makes Currys a little bit more interesting perhaps and a bit special.
So it's not much just focus on the purchase, but also the post-purchase experience.
Oh, 100%. And it's a privilege actually to have products that give you the right to have a relationship with your customers beyond that transactional piece. Our business is about helping everyone enjoy amazing technology, and that extends way beyond the point of purchase.
And do you think that's one thing that differentiates yourselves from Amazon or other big marketplaces where people buy things?
100%. 100%. Any customer who comes into Currys in the UK or in the Nordics can be really confident they're not just buying a product, they're buying support, help, advice, services that's going to help them get the best out of that tech throughout that process, whether it's advising in the purchase, to how to get the best out of it, to repairing it, to fault finding. I think that's, when we talk about the retail of the future, that experience, that trust, that relationship, I think our capabilities in that kind of longer life tech are really what makes a difference, which is why I think we'll still be here in 20, 30, 40 years' time being relevant. And that's pretty something. That's quite tough in retail today.
Absolutely. And you are the Chief Operating Officer,
Yep.
but you have a career in supply chain. You actually joined Currys as the Chief Supply Chain Officer, right?
Yep.
How did your role change?
How did my role change? Well, I guess the reality is, a Chief Supply Chain Officer, I was absolutely used to running big, complex operations and lots of people, etc. I still have all of that, so all the distribution, repairs, customer service, etc. What is very different in my COO role is I'm also responsible for our website and for our stores. And I guess the two big differences that makes. The first is we're trading through stores and websites. So I'm responsible for trading our channels, not just operating them. And I love that. I absolutely love being able to play at both ends of the execution, managing of cost and performance and efficiency and quality, but also trading, getting kind of commercial, which is super. The second element, I guess, is as COO, I have the privilege of being responsible for 95% of the colleagues that work in the UK and 100% of the customer interactions. So this is a role that really allows me to impact on both the customer and the colleague experience end to end. And that, I absolutely love that. It's a huge privilege.
And being a high achiever and and request that from others too. But it's interesting because I think that supply chain experience shaped a lot of your leadership, right? I think supply chain is probably the most challenging area I can think of. It's the one area that I look and I feel very scared about, especially nowadays. And you leave the supply chain role during Brexit, the pandemic. How did you hold things together? And what do you think is your ability that you got from that?
Listen, I always love it when someone talks about supply chain and genuinely understands, I guess, some of the complexity and challenges that sit within it. I am still at heart a bit of a supply chain geek. I think it is a super challenging role, mainly because, as I often say, you're responsible for a lot of things, and many of which you don't control. So supply chain means you are exposed to all of the external factors as well as internal, and it requires you to be, you've got to, all over the numbers and the algorithms and the predictions. You've got to somehow be looking outwards and looking inwards and managing relationships. You don't control, so you have to influence. So, I mean, I absolutely love supply chain because it's never finished. You're never finished. Even if you had a good day, tomorrow will be different. So it's constantly interesting. I think there's a big piece for me in supply chain is that focus you get really early on is understanding the things you can control. So focus on controlling the controllables. The point of having a plan so that you know you've got a plan, but then also having a plan B and a plan C. And holding tight, I guess a firm but light touch on each plan so that you can respond and kind of react.
You kind of have to be flexible too because you never know when someone's going to...
You kind of don't, but that's your job.
Yeah.
It's kind of really interesting. I always think the people who go into supply chain and operations, if you want glamour, you've probably gone the wrong way. It's not about high profile or those sorts of things. The reality is if you do a good job in supply chain, no one knows. Because effectively success looks like the job just happens. And I think that's kind of the reality. I always say that to my boss. If you can't see that I'm doing my job, it's because I'm doing my job. And I think that extends into kind of all operations, if I'm honest. The ultimate compliment is that no one noticed because everything was done and executed how it was supposed to be.
As expected, exactly.
Yes.
I got my product is fine, no problem, so that's it, it's good.
Yeah, and I think it's that ability. So I don't want a crisis. I'm not looking for any more crises, but there's something about a crisis that's kind of really powerful. It simplifies things massively. You know, it takes away quite a lot of the complexity. It mobilises people to think and behave kind of quite differently. So actually, really tough from a leadership perspective, responsible for people. It's about as tough as a situation as I've worked in. But actually, from a kind of business and leadership, it's also very liberating. We were more innovative. We moved at greater pace. We learned that we were capable of doing things that we would not have thought were kind of possible. And I think you see the very best, sometimes the worst, but often the very best of people in those most difficult circumstances. And I think I'd been encouraged probably 6 weeks when we went into lockdown. And what I saw very quickly was a whole bunch of brilliant people who were prepared to do whatever it took to look after our business and our customers and our colleagues. And it's a really forging experience.
It puts the team together as well, like everybody's bonding, everybody's...
And because it's also very clear. You know, we were very, very clear there were only 3 things that mattered. And if you went into our business today, into Currys today and said, what are the priorities? You get quite a long list. During the pandemic, it was helping customers, looking after our colleagues, and securing the long-term future of our business. That was it. And everything was about that. And actually those principles have kind of stayed with us throughout. That unites. Everyone can get behind that. If everyone can understand what their role is, people can get behind that and they can feel part of absolutely responding to what matters. I think it was kind of really powerful. Not that I have any desire, please, to go back there again, but yeah.
It's good. We learned a lot, but it's past us.
Yes.
We moved on.
Yes. Yeah.
But now as the CEO, what are some of operational shifts that you've done, something that you saw that needed to improve and you made it work? I mean, you and your team, of course.
Oh yeah, of course. So I fundamentally have a belief. I think the world, actually, if you can simplify, and anybody who's worked with me will know that I often talk about, there's, for some reason, I don't know why it is, there's often three kind of buckets. You can put things into three key plates that you're spinning. And what was very clear to me was that in some ways we'd been too simplistic looking at the operations. We wanted to talk about whether it was a cost-driven or quality-driven or customer-driven. And I don't think those are or conversations, they are and conversations. So for me, when I looked across the operations from day one, it was very much a question of making it better for our customers, better for our colleagues, and better for our shareholders. So all of my team will tell you I'm horrible in expecting. I want more, and I want better, and I want it for less.
Oh my God, Lindsay is in the room.
Yeah, you know.
Do you see their expression?
And it's kind of really interesting, because originally when I started to talk about more and better for less, people would say to me, you can't, you have to choose. And we've been running now 3-4 years on 2 really critical programs, which were designed around that kind of more and better for less. One of those is kind of easy to shop, and that's really customer focused in terms of looking at what we do and how we do it. And through processes and technology and how we behave, how do we make it easier every step of the way for our customers to shop, and becoming obsessed with that. But when you become obsessed with that, actually it's supporting everything we're trying to do as a business, but it's also making the world much better for our colleagues, because guess what? Our customers really value our colleagues. So it's really easy to find in that easy to shop, program and focus, those 3 kind of pillars of our stakeholders and shareholders, our colleagues and our customers. The second big program is right first time, because it starts from the principle that if you get more things right first time, it's a better customer experience, it's a better colleague experience, and you waste less time and money. So it's like the ultimate win-win-win.
But don't you, I don't know, like right the first time, I think is it almost gives you the pressure to not fail.
I'm not a huge believer. So Alex, who's my CEO, because he likes to talk about like 100% availability, and I'm like, that's kind of impossible. I think what it creates is an environment of continuous improvement, that you're always getting better, but you're getting better in ways that are good for customers and colleagues and the bottom line. And there's no compromise. Don't come to me with a solution that saves us a load of money, but is bad for our colleagues and bad for our customers. Find me better solutions. So I think it's harder, it's more complicated, it takes longer, but these are perennial solutions that will be just adding value to our business forever. And I'm super proud of that kind of culture that comes with that, because that's what also taps into, our Right First Time program started off as a kind of a big pain point driven, and now much of it is fueled by our colleagues. What they're feeding in is ideas, feedback on how we can do things better. And there's something about that amazing culture. Owning the business, all of us own this business, and all of us strive to do better through Right First Time, and we're never satisfied. But as long as you're celebrating, I mean, it could be relentless, couldn't it? It could be just that grind of never good enough, more. I don't think that's not how I see it, and that's not how I feel it. It's this sense that we are always getting better, and that's a source of massive pride. And actually, if you're still not good enough,
well, there's always room to improvement, right?
There's always. And I think it's so important, this sense of momentum, of improving and of getting better, and that ambition to never stand still. I mean, particularly in retail. Standing still is not standing still, it's going backwards. But so I think they're the kind of the big programs for me, but it's this culture of and, not or. For customers, colleagues, that for me is so important, it's so foundational, because it means we have the right level of ambition.
And do you have an example of something you've done, I mean, you and a team, right in the first time?
This is where it kind of gets really into the operational piece. So
you're here for it.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of two big areas where I get, particularly from the customer feedback. The first would be delivery right first time, which is particularly for big box delivery. So this would be fridges, freezers, large televisions, dishwashers, etc. It's often quite a complex You're delivering it to my home. It's a large item that needs 2 people to carry it. And you're often going to be looking for installation services and recycling. So it's a complex operation and there's a lot that can go wrong. Traffic, product issues, delays, installation issues elsewhere, etc., etc. So this is going to sound so horribly dull, so I'm apologising for the kind of, but the reality of that, it starts with analysing where the points of failure are. You know, where are we failing? What's causing that failure? Going back to that root cause and how do we fix them? And sometimes it's systems, but often it's people and processes. And often it's people and processes that sit outside of the delivery teams who are doing that end execution. So the big piece is understanding what causes the failure. Is it the people doing the job? Much less often than people would believe. It's not. Processes, systems, where in that end-to-end piece, understanding that and fixing, being COO and having a much wider remit does allow you to go and look at other parts of the engine that are creating issues further down. So that for us has been hugely important, and we've seen 3-4 percentage points of improvement in our right first time. Great for customers, better for colleagues, and a big difference to the bottom line. The other big one is damage in transit. Quite a lot of the kind of large products are quite fragile. So fridge freezers particularly are fragile, and washing machines to dents and to damage. TV screens, I'm going to tell you, large screen like this, it's hard to keep it protected. So again, it's that same approach. Where did the damage happen? What caused it? Is it behaviours from our colleagues? Is it the packaging? We've introduced better packaging, we've got protection, better processes. We reward colleagues for improved and damages, and we've seen damage in transit come down kind of double digit over the last 3 years.
Wow.
Nothing for the first year. So huge amounts of effort and no results. Second year it starts to kind of come through, and some of this is because it takes time, but also a lot of this is about behaviours, and it takes real effort and focus and consistency and reiteration to change people's behaviours.
It was not only identifying where the mistake was happening or where it could be improved, it was also to create the culture across all those processes to make that happen.
100%. And I think when we first started Right First Time, it was about finding pain points and fixing them. And after about 18 months of that, which was great, we recognised that actually there were other elements to Right First Time, and one was absolutely this hearts and minds, this culture piece. We started to see that this wasn't about initiatives to improve our business. This was about how we felt about our business and how we behaved in the culture and the ownership that every individual needed to take. And we're still on that journey.
But there's always room for improvement, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I feel really strong. I mean, I love the Currys business. I do. So you have to make change and transformation in a way that it's going to last, because you won't be here forever. And actually what you want is the legacy to be the culture, the behaviours, the processes, the way the business works should outlast you. It shouldn't be something that's tied to your leadership. So getting that cultural change, getting that locked and loaded for me is hugely important, because we're always going to have failure. It's how you minimise that failure is really, I think, what makes the difference between good and great.
Yeah, I've seen a few businesses that they were so worried. Starbucks is a good example. They were so worried about being too efficient, and they end up killing the inefficient parts, but also the customer experience, right? You also have to be careful about that. How do you measure the efficiencies to not interrupt the customer experience?
You're making a really good point. I think that's a really good question. And I think it comes back to me to these 3 kind of things that matter, and not looking at them in isolation. So there are 3 key buckets of measures for me. Customer satisfaction, so NPS and CSAT measures. I've then got I've got colleague engagement, and I've got colleague turnover. And then I've got cost to serve and reduced and cost of failure. So for me, I'm constantly looking at those 3 things together, and my expectation is they're all going to improve, because you cannot sacrifice customer experience to cost out, unless you do it deliberately. Sometimes you can make those choices. But for me, it's really important to understand the implications of the choices you make. So you don't pull a lever over here and then go, oh, I didn't expect. You have to understand the implications, and wherever possible, you want the water to raise all boats at the same time. And I think it is that importance of looking across those measures. I'm an operator and I'm responsible for very large budgets. I'm not actually responsible for the NPS and the CSAT. I'm largely responsible for a big chunk of the engagement scores. But I think as business leaders, you know what really matters, and you have to take absolute ownership for ensuring that you're balancing it correctly and that your colleagues understand that as well. And what you're telling them is important, and how you reward them. So all of our colleagues on their bonus schemes, there is an element of customer satisfaction in those bonus schemes. So it's not just words, it's also about what hits their pay packet, is knowing that happy customers is absolutely critical to our business.
I love how you talk about numbers. That's what drives you, apparently, as well.
I'm a massive people person. So
Okay.
That's why I love being in operations, because I have loads of colleagues and I'm responsible for loads of customers. So I'm definitely a people person, but yeah, I'm an operator. So I'm very goals and outcome kind of driven. You know, operators like to achieve stuff. I like to be able to point at measurable things that are better as a result. Yeah.
Talking
Guilty
about,
as charged.
Yeah, there are some numbers that I found very alarming when I was doing my research. So the British Retail Consortium's crime report in 2025 showed some super concerning incidents of violence in retail. So what we called retail crimes. 2022 to 2023, there were 475,000 incidents, and 2023 to 2024 was 737,000, which is, I don't know what is happening in the UK. I think it's worldwide, but it's very alarming. It's a significant jump. How you as an operator see these numbers, and what are you doing to support your team on that?
Anybody who operates in the UK, particularly in UK retail, is massively concerned with the huge uplift we've seen in aggression towards colleagues and aggressive theft in retail. I can't explain the why, but what I do know is it has a huge impact, particularly on the individuals. We talk about shoplifting being a victimless crime. It absolutely is not. At its worst, there's quite high levels of violence and threat, both towards customers and towards our colleagues. So honestly, it's completely unacceptable. And the reality is, for us, the most important part of what we can do is to try and create an environment that prevents as much of this as possible. So let's talk about the theft, the theft and the aggravated theft kind of element. So we've just recently had a biannual safety week, where we give it absolute real focus back in and talking about all the things that we are doing around safety. And we just had one. We've just announced our biggest investment in safety in our stores. So some of that is targeted at product. How do we make it harder for people to steal particularly high value products? So it disincentivizes them from coming into the store to try and steal. And there's some great technology coming out around laptops and mobile phones that makes it very, very difficult for them to be stolen. So the more we can make it difficult,
all right,
and we want them to know it's incredibly difficult, the less they'll be inclined to come in. It's not the individuals, it's the gangs who come in, and the high levels of violence that's the most kind of concerning. There's the work we're doing with the police. So we're working with the police, but also through the Aura system that allows us to, with other retailers, piece together, because quite a lot of these crimes and something like that are consistent and repeated offenders. So how do we identify them? How do we work with the police to prevent as much as possible and identify these persistent offenders? Our colleagues have now got headsets, allows them to communicate to each other, but also to alert when there's a risk of theft or where there's a situation that's getting uncomfortable. And we also have, particularly on our service desk, so aside from the theft, where we tend to find the instances of customer aggression will often be around the service desk, having screens, particularly in our high-risk areas, where people know they're being filmed. And it seems to just, again, put them off, or maybe just stop them, make them think a little bit.
Yeah, if it's one layer of more difficult or something that inhibit them to do something, right? Like it's
having a little notice that just says we will not tolerate verbal or physical abuse towards our staff, etc. And we've encouraged, the big thing for us is being encouraging all of our teams in stores and in our supply chain to report any instance. And they're allowing us to try and follow it up through the police, and to understand what the points of cause are. But honestly, it's one of the most dispiriting parts, I think, of the job for me, how some of our customers will treat our colleagues. It's kind of really tough, but we're doing everything we can to protect our colleagues. I think every retailer is wrestling with the same challenges, quite frankly, and we'll do more test and learn. We're trying to find better, smarter ways.
Yeah, and it's almost like a work of everybody getting together to solve this problem, right? Like, because it affects everyone. And you proud of yourself, I can see, of giving this, I wouldn't say autonomy, but this power into the hands of each employee, especially the front line, right? Like of being like entrepreneurs, maybe even working for Currys. How does it work? Do they give feedbacks to improve operations? And it's still, you said you have 700 stores. Do you have a system where you collect feedbacks? How does it work?
So I think it works quite differently in different parts of our business. So in the UK now, we have just under 300 stores. So tapping into the entrepreneurs in our business can be done in a number of ways. It doesn't all have to be centralised. So each of our stores has its own general manager, and there's an element of within that area, them tapping into their colleagues. The principle for me is we employ really talented, smart people. And they are, I say this across, it's not just in our stores, in our supply chain, in our repairs, in our customer service, really smart, capable people. And the more that they engage with our business, the more they want to take ownership for making the business better. I mean, this for me is rocket fuel. This is what drives the best retailers to be the best retailers. So you're absolutely right. The challenge for us is how do we unlock that? How do you get great people? How do you get them engaged? So we've done that. We've got great people. We've got fabulous levels of engagement. But then what do you do with the outputs of that? How do you kind of collect that? So we're rolling out at the moment a tool we call the pitch. And it's called the pitch because if you're a really engaged colleague, you're on the pitch. You're not sat in the seats watching. And it's a brilliant AI-supported tool that allows colleagues to put forward their ideas. It collates them together. It also identifies if a colleague has an idea that somebody else has already submitted. So you avoid some of that kind of repetition, and it creates a really, really strong pipeline. So the colleague's idea don't get lost. They don't stop with the general manager. They don't get lost somewhere en route. They're all kept together. They're all considered. Every single one of those ideas will get a response. Everything can be actioned, but if it is actioned, they get an opportunity to be involved in translating their idea into activity. So, but that's not where it started. Really, and I think this is where some of this kind of innovation entrepreneurs really come from, is you have to have great people and you have to give them some space to try to innovate. So you can't do that in all environments. I don't really want us innovating on brand new ways of doing things in an uncontrolled way in my stores with kind of the customers. We have hothouse environments, testing environments that allows us to be quite innovative with those kind of colleague ideas. And it's not top down. They try, some things don't work, quite a lot of things don't work, but they have a degree of freedom, they have a degree of investment that allows them just take it to the next level. And certainly in our repair operations, some of the innovation that's come out of our repairs teams is just mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like it.
I'm interested.
This is a really basic, simple example. When you repair a large screen TV, a huge amount of the cost sits in the screen. And at one point, when we were repairing we had to replace the entire screen. And what that meant was, it's very expensive. What it meant was there was quite a lot of TV repairs that just weren't commercially viable. So you have to write off that product and it's no longer usable other than for spare parts. So one of our colleagues said, this is crazy, because often what's just broken is one small subcomponent of these screens. So they basically took that idea and worked on that idea to the extent that now the repairs of our large screen TVs can be just an individual component being replaced rather than the entire screen. And that came from the colleague. The manufacturers didn't do it. That's not how they worked. So we had to go and talk to them about how do we work with us for these spare parts. It's transformed the commerciality, but also the performance of our repair operations. And that was just a colleague who came up with that. Another example is 3D printing. So I've been saying to the team, come on, in the future, surely we're going to 3D print our spare parts, etc. And they went, yeah. And there's lots of reasons why it's incredibly difficult. But actually the team have been working for the last 2.5 years on 3D printing as a capability, which is going to revolutionise some parts of supply chain, particularly around spare parts. And for the first time now, we are actually being able to print spare parts that are not available on the market. So you can't repair without them. You know, that product will just will either get recycled or thrown away. We are now being able to repair it because we can produce these unique parts. And if I tell you there's some products where for the lack of a 35 pence component, you're throwing away £200 worth of perfectly good product, we're finding solutions. And in its early days, but it's so exciting.
It is.
For me.
From everything that I thought you answered, I think that beats all my expectations.
And it's those two extremes. You know, someone's got this detailed process, and the other is about being able to kind of really dream and imagine and sticking at it.
Seeing the problem and
sticking at it for 2 years and working it through until you can actually start to I mean, they're phenomenal teams.
Yeah, and I see Currys and sustainability. There are two nouns that are attached more and more, and especially what you're saying, like with the e-commerce component, which is what you're going to be talking about at Shop Talk Europe.
Yeah.
Which I'm very excited. I don't want to dive too deep into this topic as we're going to be on stage to talk about it, but can you give us an idea of what you're going to be talking about? What is this e-commerce component for Currys?
Okay. Everyone knows that increasingly we are seeing consumers interested and engaging with pre-loved, second-hand kind of products. So electricals is just heaven sent, because actually many of the products, particularly for people who are early adopters, there's lots of life left in product long after potentially that individual owner has stopped wanting to keep that product. So for us, it's a huge opportunity in terms of a new market. There's always a commercial angle for me on this. There has to be a commercial angle. So we talk a lot about profit going hand in hand with purpose. I've looked after sustainability on and off. I don't for Currys, but I have kind of previously. And sometimes sustainability, I think, gets tarnished with this lens of kind of doing good, etc. And I think it's massively important we take our responsibilities for looking after the longevity of this planet. And electricals has lots of opportunities with that. A, we're using precious metals. B, certainly we have a zero waste to landfill, but actually there are thousands of tons of electrical waste that goes into landfill every year, which is quite frankly intolerable. So we're in a brilliant place, effectively, to take these products, to give them longer life, to create products at a price point that makes them accessible to more people and more families. And particularly when you think, some of what we sell is nice to have, but a lot of what we sell isn't, not in this modern world. Being connected through tablets or phones or computing, being able to game, to connect socially. These are really important parts of living in the modern world. And they're not always accessible to everybody. So our ability to extend the life of products that you've got to avoid you having to repurchase helps you as a consumer. If you don't want to keep that product, we can refurb it and we can sell it on to somebody who perhaps can't access that new product at that price point. So for me, it's a huge satisfaction in looking after the planet, in looking after customers and adding real value into the economy. And we have Europe's largest repairs lab in our business, where we have this amazing set of colleagues who have this skill set of being able to take tech Everything from your television or your washing machine, all the way through now to games consoles, coffee machines, health and beauty products. So increasingly, this is just changing, I think, the environment, no pun intended, in terms of electrical products and the choices that you have. You can buy product with your conscience clear, knowing that it will always be looked after, right to the end of its life when it's maybe no longer viable. We'll use it for spare parts, we'll recycle it. Nothing that ever comes back through the Currys business ever gets thrown away or goes to landfill. And I'm hugely proud of that. What goes hand in hand with that, though, is some of this innovation and profitability.
I was going to ask, because usually sustainability is like a cost because it's nice to have. And now that margins are getting tighter, people are like, oh, you know what? Let's leave it for 5 years from now. Can companies be sustainable and profitable?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk about every sector, every product, but I can say in electricals, absolutely. So that's always been the criteria for us. We are a retailer. We make wafer-thin margins. And I think, again, this point about sustainability, if you want a sustainability program, it has to make money. It has to be commercially viable.
It has to be financially sustainable.
100%. That's what sustainable means, is that it can last. And I think that for me is the brilliant work that our teams have done, have meant that it's commercially viable for us to repair more and more products and to refurb more and more products and to make more of those available to customers. And I'm super excited. I genuinely am as to where this will go. But yeah, it's profit and purpose, hand in hand. This is kind of the heart, I guess, of Currys and what we do.
All right, so I am excited for the conversation at Shop Talk. I'm sure everybody here is gonna love hearing more about it. So you've guided the team, and I guess many teams in your career, through a few transformations. This one that you've just described for us in this episode was very impressive, and you love the people component of it, which we can see that comes from your heart, and that's beautiful to see. What would be your advice to leaders who lead their team in a digital transformation?
There's so much, but I guess kind of fundamentally, in a transformation, what I think is really important is to start with a clear and compelling vision as to why. I think everyone needs to know why they're doing something before they know the what. So I think that's the bit, that clear, compelling, why are you doing this? And then that translation of the why into the what. What are the outcomes going to be? What's going to be different? That translates into the what are we actually going to do? And the how comes last. I think sometimes you get too quickly into that how. And actually quite a lot of that how can be decided more locally. So I think that's the critical piece, is that compelling, consistent vision, and making sure that there are milestones along the way that you can celebrate progress. Because real transformations, meaningful transformations, often take a really long time to deliver and to be able to see some of the fruits of your labours. So how do you create the desire to get there? And how do you then take that momentum and keep that momentum going on that journey when it gets to those dips, so that people feel a sense of achievement and can remember why they're going, where they go? I think as a leader, that's really, really critical.
And what was one leadership advice you've got in your career that you took with you?
I always think the leadership advice that you hold dear is probably the leadership advice that talks to your own kind of personal, perhaps, weaknesses. So probably the advice that I was given, which is to always put your oxygen mask on yourself first. There's always a danger as a leader, that kind of passion and that drive, that you don't look after yourself. So I had to work quite hard at keeping balance, work-life balance, looking after myself. I'm getting better as I get older, but that's probably the most important advice that I had, and it's I've done something with it, and it's genuinely changed what I've done. Yes.
So take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Most of what we do is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, that was it, but I have an extra question, because this week things got very weird, especially in the supply chain world. Another disruption that we're gonna have to work around. What is your advice to everybody that is just like me, like not knowing what's next?
So as you can imagine, I imagine every business across the globe is having these conversations at the moment. What does this mean?
And I'm happy, like I was like, oh my God, thank goodness I'm talking to someone in supply chain today because I can ask.
So I think the first thing as I come back to is in any kind of crisis is control the controllables. Really, really be clear about what things can you influence and what can't you influence. So spending a lot of time ruminating on what may or may not happen. In some ways it's helpful if you're scenario planning, but it's not if you get into a kind of a doom loop. The other is intelligence of any kind. So I guess one of the advantages that we have is, or anybody has, is your network, who you're connected to. So networks are massively helpful at this stage. Starting to see how other businesses are living it, how our suppliers are living it, how our brands, how other retailers are living it, just to start picking up as much intel as you possibly can of the potential so whats. And balancing, being ready, being prepared for the worst, but actually keeping focused. Because actually we've got great momentum. We've got great momentum in our business. There's improving momentum in the UK. We don't want to be a distraction from that. So focus on the job that needs to be done, control the controllables, and get as much intelligence as you possibly can from as broad a network as possible. Because as you start to build the jigsaw puzzle up, that becomes kind of critical. But yeah. We've all tested this muscle a lot over the last 5 years.
So I
think we do feel kind of like well ready and well prepared for whatever will come, because whatever has been pretty much the agenda for the last 5 years of huge levels of disruption and challenge.
Another
so we're
year
pretty
to
relaxed,
test our resilience.
Crazy, but
exactly.
yes. Yeah.
Lindsay, I can't wait to see you in Barcelona. Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure meeting you and hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you too.